Good afternoon, everyone, and very welcome. Thanks for joining us today to another webinar of the Future Classroom Lab, this time in collaboration with one of our long-standing partners, Iris Connect. My name is Eugenia Casariego, and I work for European Schoolnet. For those of you who don't know yet what European Schoolnet is or does, we are a network of 32 ministers of education in Europe and beyond. We are based in Brussels, and we bring together ministers of education, but as well policymakers, experts, teachers, schools, and of course our industry partners to bring innovation to our classrooms and to education in general. As well, this webinar is organized in collaboration or co-organized by the Future Classroom Lab, the FCL. And the FCL is one of our initiatives. It's a space, or more or less an ecosystem, that brings together these stakeholders to innovate in pedagogy and education. It's basically an experimentation space where we get to try new things and to try new technology and to bring together these stakeholders in education. This webinar as well is organized in collaboration with Novigado. Novigado is an Erasmus Plus project coordinated by the Think Foundation of Poland. And this project is focusing on active learning and innovative teaching in flexible learning spaces. And of course, this webinar is as well organized in collaboration with our partners of Iris Connect, about whom you will hear more about in a minute. Before I move on to present our speakers, who today will speak about the digital future of supporting teachers' career long learning, I would like to mention a couple of practical matters. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded and the recording may be used for dissemination purposes. As well, I would like to invite you to comment, to post your comments and your questions, both on Facebook and on the YouTube comment section. We're following those, we're monitoring those. So please interact with our speakers, comment on the content, and ask your questions. We will be putting on the screen selected comments, as well as addressing your questions at the end of the webinar, where there will be a dedicated questions and answers section. So please do comment, do ask questions, and our speakers are very much looking forward to hearing your questions, to chatting with you. So please do so. And without further ado, I would like then to present the speakers of today's webinar. So I have with me Vesna Belogashka, who is the director of Iris Connect in UK and Ireland, and Annie Kushbeck, who's a teacher education specialist at the Center for Teacher Education and Higher Education in the University of Tartu in Estonia. So once again, please don't forget to type your questions on Facebook and YouTube comment sections. And as well, one small reminder, we will be posting on both YouTube and Facebook comments a link to a form where you can give us feedback about the webinar. But as well, you can sign up to hear more about the Future Classroom Lab initiatives and projects. And you can as well sign up to receive further news from Iris Connect, just one follow-up email. So please don't forget to fill in the form so that we may stay in touch after the webinar. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, Vesna.
Hello, everybody. It's really great to be here, and thank you for this opportunity to share the experiences of teaching and learning that we have gathered from many countries and many different organizations over the years. Can I just make sure that everyone can see the slides? Thank you. So in this first part of the webinar, I'll just take a few minutes to give an overview of Iris Connect, which some of you who have been involved with the work of the European Schoolnet might be aware of. And for others, it might be a first presentation. And in the second part of the webinar, we have the pleasure of having an example of how this system has been incorporated in initial teacher education, and more of that will be presented by Annie. So first of all, let's start with who we are. What is Iris Connect? It is a collaborative professional learning platform that facilitates highly effective and evidence-based teacher professional development throughout their career, from initial teacher education or pre-service through early careers to ongoing professional learning and development at all stages of a teacher's career. We work with educational organizations at all levels of education: preschool, primary, secondary, further education, colleges and universities. And our growing community currently includes over 100,000 teachers and other type of educators, over 40 countries across the world. So what is the purpose of IRIS Connect, our raison d'etre? Since the quality of teaching has been established as the most important school-based factor that impacts students' learning outcomes, our mission is to transform global teacher professional learning and development and to empower teachers to teach their best. The creation of our solution dates back to 2008, and it was inspired by research and is continually informed by research into what actually works in teacher professional learning. So we enable the learning experiences that the research has told us are necessary for actual implementation of the professional learning into practice. That is to allow teachers to achieve progress and sustained behavioral change in their teaching practice. This particular study that we can see the evidence here on the screen is by Joyce and Showers, American researchers, who have pointed out to the 5 learning experiences that are key in terms of transferring of the knowledge into the teaching practice. So they include presentation of theory, modeling and demonstration of what that looks like in practice, opportunity for teachers to practice in their own environment and to self-reflect, opportunity to receive peer feedback, and an opportunity for ongoing collaboration, including mentoring and coaching. So on the right-hand side, we can see the level of transfer that happens at each learning experience. So we can see that when teachers are exposed to theory, whether that is through reading or through presentation, only 5% of them would actually transfer that into their own practice. And you can see how that progressively increases with every additional learning activity. And all of these are very necessary and they're required, but on their own, they are insufficient. It's only when we have all of them embedded in one place, when a teacher is able to be exposed to all of those, then 90% of teachers would actually implement it into practice. Now you can see that most of these really highly effective learning experiences depend on one vital ingredient, and that is observing teachers in their environment. So the observation is key here. However, there are some challenges to observing teachers in the classrooms. Some of the key issues here are that it can be expensive and hard to scale. It would necessitate potentially taking time to travel if it's a matter of a coach from a different organization, or if it's a peer, it would require cover for their own lesson. Then observations can also be subjective and disruptive. It's subjective because it relies on the participants' memory in terms of what happened and how that's interpreted, rather than a shared memory and evidence that a recording of an observation would provide. In addition, the authenticity of the whole situation can be compromised when there is an observer in the classroom, because human nature is that people behave differently when they're being observed. There can be challenges with travel, and I think we've all witnessed how that can be really at a very large scale globally over the last year and a half, in terms of not being actually able to travel, even if there is a choice to do so. And also, in some environments in particular, the observations are associated with performance management and summative assessment, which can really impact on the quality of the observation and the actual outcomes of it, which would be a shame. And this is where technology can be very beneficial, especially using video collaboration technology for remote teacher observation and feedback. However, the use of technology itself brings its own challenges. We have all seen quite a rapid deployment of technology for remote learning solutions over the last 18 months, which could be, on one hand, a good building block, but on the other hand, we cannot underestimate the challenges that include accessibility to technology for equality and equity purposes, security and privacy, which is paramount, especially when it comes to sensitive environments like filming in classrooms, ease of use, and clear purpose, which is really vital for effective adoption and integration by the teachers. So ultimately, giving just the tools and teaching someone how to use them is not enough. Solving the practical challenges of using video for professional learning is the strength of Iris Connect. But it's not just the technical aspect. I'm talking about the change management processes and frameworks that address the emotional and the organizational aspects too. We understand that introducing new technology in busy schools is challenging, and teachers' work is affected by a complex set of personal, organizational, and professional factors that needs to be considered. So success requires a smart strategy addressing teachers' needs and concerns, and an onboarding process that is motivating and inspiring. We have developed the tools and systems to address all of those challenges. So, what does that include? The system incorporates an application, a mobile app, that allows easy and secure recording of the teaching practice when it takes place in the classroom. When it takes place online, we have a screen capture tool for that. But in the classroom, the app can be downloaded on any mobile device, including teachers' own devices, or they can use it on our own camera system that we have developed that enables dual view recording to capture both the actions of the teachers and the reactions of the student, which is then synchronized and presented side to side, which can be very powerful when it comes to analysis and reflection. The app itself has several education specific security features that makes it particularly useful, as a result it has been approved for use in highly sensitive environments across Europe, including professional development in both mainstream education but also in the health sector. In the online teaching scenarios, our screen capture allows recording of the teaching and learning, and we also have integrated video conferencing facility for remote teaching and learning, including feedback sessions. The recording is automatically then uploaded into the teacher's personal space on the website, where they can use the available tools for analysis, and self-reflection, for example, using rubrics as a guide or using timestamp comments, which you can see on this screen here. That can be very powerful way for annotation and evidence-based feedback. The teachers can share the recordings, if they choose so, with peers, mentors, coaches, while having complete control over it. It's based on permissioning, so only the creator of the video can decide if and with whom to share it. They can also create a bank of resources, videos of real teaching that can be used for continuing professional development, and it can be shared. The platform really lends itself to secure collaboration within and between organizations. We have unique set of protocols for creating trust networks between organizations that are GDPR compliant, such as between a group of schools or teacher education, universities, and partner schools for supporting student teachers observation and feedback, or for running interactive blended programs, for creating and maintaining professional learning communities, which can be both informal or more formal, such as international projects like Erasmus Plus or Horizon. which we have had the privilege of being part of in several such projects over the years. Most recently, it was the IT Lab project with the European SchoolNet. And the last one that we were involved with was the Visual project, where we collaborated with experts from 6 European higher education institutions to research and co-create resources for video-supported collaborative learning. And we produced teacher's guide, including pedagogical model for video-supported collaborative learning, a mesh guide, and a MOOC, which is hosted on our platform. And it's open to any interested parties. Links will be shared, I believe, in the chat section in order to access some of the pertinent case studies that have come out of these projects, as well as the link to the actual project website. The Visual project was particularly successful in establishing a sustainable business higher education collaboration, and the ongoing relationship we now have with University of Tartu in Estonia is a great example of that. University of Tartu was one of those 6 higher education institutions who worked on the project. They carried out several experiments using Iris Connect in various settings, which included live remote observation with in-ear coaching of speech therapists using our Go Live feature, and remote observation of student teachers, which proved particularly useful as it allowed them to, in the circumstances, continue the program they were following without interruption, despite the fact that it happened during the strict COVID restrictions. So following the Visual project, University of Tartu decided to integrate Iris Connect in some of their teacher education programs, which is what you will hear about in the next part of this webinar. So now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Annie Kuzvek, teacher education specialist, who will share the University of Tartu's perspective on integrating Iris Connect in their platforms, the reaction of the teachers, and their future plans. So Annie, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So I will talk about how we have used Iris Connect video reflection platform in our university. Before that, I just have 2 slides for you about the University of Tartu. It is ranked as top 1.2% of world's best universities, and obviously most of teaching takes place in Estonian language, but we do have several programs also in English. In the Institute of Education, where I work, we offer both pre-service training for teachers, special educators, speech therapists, and so on, and also in-service training programs for working teachers and school leaders. And in our institute, it's possible to study in master's program in English, in educational technology, and also do your PhD studies in English. So just a little backup information about us. We are located quite up north, northern part of Europe. And when I started making this presentation, I thought, what are the things that connects the future classroom lab, Iris Connect, and this little survey I'm gonna talk about. And I realized that these 3 parties actually have several keywords or focus points, same. For example, first of all, the professional development of teachers, including teacher students, then evidence-based research, important keywords, and finally technology, educational technology, video technology, collaborative technology. So we have several things, several same interests. And once, I think it was Vesna who shared this study done by Professor Christina Prester with us, and it was done with already in-service teachers. Well, we can say that we were inspired by that survey and used it as an inspiration to conduct our own among teacher students. So we already had tried Iris Connect with smaller groups, and now we wanted to use it more. So we gave the opportunity for teacher educators, if they wanted to incorporate this platform into their courses. And we wanted to get the self-assessment from student teachers, how this experience of recording and sharing and reflecting their performance as teachers affects them professionally, and also get the specific feedback about the Iris Connect platform itself. And of course, there's the long-term aim of improving teacher training in our institute as well. And so in the end, we got 9 groups who used Iris Connect. The pedagogical practicum has several groups. 5 of them decided to use it. Also, class teachers, basic practice, and the 2 second ones are from the special education department, and also one from physical education teachers and sports coaches. A very small group for them. So here is like an overview of how it was used. Iris Connect, as Vesna said, is a mobile app. So you can basically use it anywhere if you have internet connection. There's also plan B if you don't have, but so in classroom, outside, in a sports hall, in kindergarten, or on one-on-one interaction when the special educators or speech therapists work with the preschoolers, for example, and obviously also mentioned the screen capture function for any online teaching. So we prepared a questionnaire. So once the students did their school practice, we wanted to know what their attitude and experience was. So we just wanted to ask them to give us 10 minutes of their time after their experience and give us feedback, to get their honest feedback, how they really felt about this experience. So the last group actually had their final seminar just a few days ago, so I'm still expecting more answers to come in. This data is very, very fresh. So we have responses from 82 participants, and most of the groups are from the master's degree programs, because that's when most of the on-site school practices takes place. Well, on-site obviously was the ideal plan, but since the situation worldwide, in the end, approximately half of them managed to record in the kindergarten or in school, and approximately another half had to use the screen capture function to record their online teaching. So let's see. First of all, we wanted to know if they had any previous experience about filming themselves in teaching or counseling or training, and the majority of them had never done this before. Some had done it a few times, and many of them had done it during their bachelor degree studies. And I know that that used to be this mini lesson version where their fellow students acted as children. So it was like playing the lesson with actors, so to speak. And only 2 had done it several times. We also wanted to know what was their previous attitude towards this kind of experience, and not surprisingly, they were not very keen on doing that. They didn't want to hear the voice. They didn't like thinking about seeing themselves on video. It made them uncomfortable. and they thought they would be too stressed about the whole process of filming. They were afraid of seeing their mistakes. They were afraid of receiving negative feedback from others. So that was like the starting point. But now let's see what they thought after this practicum course was over and how they felt then. So, for example, we asked them how the feedback from fellow students on their own video, if it was useful for them. And out of 82 people, all except one said that yes, it was useful. And there's some context behind that one no. And the fact is that that person commented that the feedback from fellow students was too positive, too supportive. I guess I can only assume they expected more advice or more ideas, but only got praise. But others said that the feedback was positive and encouraging, and they received some great ideas for the future. Then we asked if the feedback from the lecturer was useful for them, and also all except one, another person this time, said that it was useful, it was supportive, and they also got great recommendations from the lecturer. And the one person who answered no also added a comment saying that while they were filming their lesson, they already noticed some aspects. Then they rewatched it, noticed some more. Then they received feedback from their fellow students, at least two. And then finally, the feedback from the lecturer didn't add anything new, only agreed with the things already mentioned before. So that's like the context behind these no's. And then we also wanted to know if watching the videos from other students was useful. And in this case, every single one of them said that it was very useful for them, and they learned new methods and saw some interesting ways to conduct a class. So the video recordings and sharing them gave them a chance to, so to speak, visit another classroom that they wouldn't have seen otherwise. Now, let's see. We wanted to know their self-assessment about how this experience with Iris Connect affected their quality of teaching. And only the blue sector here, 5 people said that it affected them positively. Majority said it affected them positively. And some said that it didn't change. Either they were confident before and were confident after this experience. So out of the 5 who said that there was a negative effect, they mentioned that they had some technical problems with their computers, or were they just a bit too stressed about the whole filming itself. And that took their attention away from the actual teaching. But the ones who said the effect was positive, they also found it positive when they found something, when they learned something, noticed some perhaps negative aspects, but they still considered it overall a positive experience for noticing those things and having the possibility to improve themselves in the future. And we had a separate question about their confidence as specialists, as teachers, and for over 90% of the participants who responded, they said that their confidence increased. Unfortunately, the 7 who said that it didn't add any comments, so I still need to look through their other answers to find out if they give any hints there. But for example, they said that watching their own videos, they realized what and how to do better next time. They saw in the video that they had been too critical of themselves. They said that this safe environment to positive feedback increased their confidence. And even if they were scared of filming themselves when others can watch it, they now realize that this fear is useless because they can really learn from each other. And in the future, in the autumn semester, we continue using Iris Connect in with other groups, in other practicum courses. And what I noticed was that this Iris Connect was very extremely useful for the special educators and speech therapists who work with younger children and with more smaller groups. They found it very useful. And also the students who already work in kindergartens or in schools, they can film their actual work with actual children, and this is very useful even for the ones who are sent to a school practicum only for 2 or 3 weeks, for example. Also, Iris Connect offers this in-earpiece possibility for the student to be in their classroom teaching, and the mentor can be anywhere, connected via the internet, observing live, and when necessary, give some instructions into the teacher's ear, for example. For different reasons, this was postponed from this spring to this autumn, but in a small group, we plan to practice this. And we also are planning some collaboration with Tallinn University, who also had their very first experience with Iris Connect this semester. And as Vesna mentioned, even between different organizations, Iris Connect platform allows to create these like communities and to share videos even between different organizations. So I can say that our teacher educators are very happy with this experience, and yes, we recommend it. So that's it. Now I would like to invite everyone to post any questions about Vesna's presentation or about mine, and we would really love to hear your opinions, how video reflection can be used to support teaching and learning. I think the options are endless, and we would love to hear your out of the box ideas how this could be done based on what you saw from Vesna's and my presentation, for example. But for now, I say thank you from my part, and we are looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annie. It's always really good to hear from the actual practitioner, and it's been a very good and long learning journey for us as an organization, being able to work with educators in different settings, different cultures, and to really understand what are the differences and what are the similarities. And it has been very inspiring to see how the teaching and learning objectives seem to be the same everywhere, regardless of the resources that are available. But there is an element of adaptation that is necessary, and that is something that our experience has been enriched by having that. So, and also having universities like yourself to actually do research into it and to understand the attitudes and how to deal with that and how to optimize it is certainly something that is very, very valuable. And we're looking forward to the continuing collaboration.
Same here.
Thank you very much to both. It was wonderful to hear your experience at the university and the results of your research, Annie, but as well, it was great, Vesna, to hear more about the technology. And I especially like to hear about how you came about from the beginning and what obstacles you wanted to overcome with the technology. So truly thank you to both. It's been very enlightening. I hope so for our audience. Of course, now I would like to to ask you a few questions and to interact as well with our audience. So everyone who's listening, please don't hesitate to post your comments either on Facebook or on YouTube. We'll be moderating those and sending those to our speakers. But I have a few questions as well to ask. So my first question is to Vesna. So we just went through a great deal of change in education. We very rapidly, almost from one day to the next last year, we switched to remote education, and that had an impact in teaching and learning. So how did this impact Iris Connect? How did your product, how did your software, how did it evolve with the switch to remote education?
That's an interesting experience that we've had. Given that we work with several thousand institutions already, different institutions reacted differently. Some of them really realized the potential of our system in those moments when there was a real need for very rapid upskilling of teachers in terms of how they were delivering the teaching and learning. So the fact that teaching can be recorded and reflected on and shared, and resources used in that sort of secure way was something that had been invaluable for some of the organizations that used Iris Connect. And we've had a lot of feedback saying that certain programs wouldn't have been made possible if it wasn't for Iris Connect. And I think one example was at University of Tartu, and especially in initial teacher education, actually being able to still support the student teachers so that they can actually continue with their programs and to obtain the qualifications. And that has led to a lot more engagement with initial teacher education, especially in the UK, but across Europe as well. With in-service, it was very interesting. Some schools reacted in a way that meant that they actually didn't use the system because they perceived the system to be something for professional development when everything else is sorted out. And they, of course, everybody had other priorities. And then yet others really used it to great benefit. So we've had mixed reaction, but I think ultimately, because it's designed to help with the professional development regardless of what is happening, and to be able to reflect on the teaching and learning regardless whether it's happening in the classrooms or in a hybrid way or just remotely, we have seen to our real pleasure that we have been able to help to a great extent, especially in the difficult circumstances that the whole world found itself, not just education, over the last year and a half.
Absolutely, and indeed, as you are mentioning, the core of Iris Connect is to help with teacher training. So it's a very interesting time to be there, because it showed us that we need to improve and to perhaps even change the way we do teacher training, that the usual is no longer the best way perhaps to tackle these new challenges and these new currents and ideas. So indeed, it must be a very interesting time as well for Iris Connect. And so I was very interested to hear that you participated as well, of course, in the Visual project, and you have helped create not just research, but as well resources. And I want to hear a bit more about these resources that you produce with the Visual project. So what resources are there to be found? Are they currently open for everyone? And then how can we use these for teacher training?
Yes, would you like me to answer, Annie, or did you want to?
You can answer.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, we work together on the project, so we're both very conversant in what we provided. It was interesting that this project was focused on video-supported collaborative learning, and obviously we started way before the pandemic started, but it was just so pertinent. And it was interesting that during the project, in the initial stages, when we were looking through the literature, we found quite a lot of literature on collaborative learning and literature on using video in teacher education, but not those two actually together. So it was interesting for us that there were several pedagogical models that we had discovered, but it was our mission to create a video-supported pedagogical model. In Iris Connect, we had used one before, which is based on film club or video club scenario, where teachers have opportunity to watch clips of real practice, not necessarily best practice, which is crucial here, real practice, in order to discuss what is effective, what isn't, and to reflect on that and be able to implement it in their teaching and their ongoing development. So that was one of the models that actually was taken into consideration when we created the pedagogical model within the project. And that model, together with additional really useful hands-on information, is included in teacher's guide, which if anyone is interested, if you just click on the project website, there is a section with resources. So the links will be found there to the teacher's guide, which is downloadable. There is also a mesh guide that has recently been published. And there is also a MOOC for video supported collaborative learning, which we have hosted on the Iris Connect platform. And it's open, and it's open at any time. So it's not the conventional MOOC that usually takes facilitation and it's open for a limited period of time. We wanted to basically make all of those valuable resources that came from experts from different areas, including industry and education and academy, to make them available on an ongoing basis. So again, the link is there, and anyone who is interested is able to gain access to it. Of course, it's open source, so it's free of charge. So I invite anyone who is interested to really look at those materials, and any feedback would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Vesna. Indeed, for those of you who are listening today, we just posted on the comment section about YouTube and Facebook the links to these resources. So I invite you to check them out. I invite you to look them up and to join them, to join the MOOC. It's a very nice idea as well to have developed a MOOC that everyone can join at any time. I think that's great, and that's a great deal for providing support and teacher training indeed. And I want to get a bit deeper now into how Iris Connect affects pedagogy. And so I have a question for you, Annie. So you mentioned a very interesting statistic of the research that you've done with your student who will be teachers. So you mentioned that 65% of them mentioned that Iris Connect has affected positively the quality of their teaching. And you've mentioned here and there a few reasons. And I would like to get a bit deeper into that. And can you tell us a bit more about how Iris Connect can improve pedagogy and can improve the way that we teach our teachers, and eventually the way that they will become teachers? Can you dig a bit deeper into and tell our audience a bit more about this?
Yes, I think the opportunity for them to see themselves from a third person's perspective gave them the confidence that, well, one of the comments also said that we tend to be too critical about ourselves, and they feel a bit vulnerable sharing their teaching with other peers or other educators. But once they actually see it, they realize that, oh, I'm actually very good. So that's the gift for them, I think. And seeing others in front of a classroom also sometimes making small mistakes, understanding that this is not the end of the world. All teachers are also just human beings, and it's normal. And if you trip, you learn something, and it makes you better in the end.
Absolutely. No, those are very valid reasons as well. And I think it's very interesting to incorporate this in teacher training, because we don't often think of teacher training as something that we can get video feedback on. Is it so? You know, we think of something more, perhaps that video feedback could be more useful in something a bit more practical, more mechanical, but sometimes something like teaching can be actually really valuable. And it's very interesting then to hear that as much as 65% of them found it actually useful. I think it's a great statistics to hear. And I think
it was like close to 75%. 5%. It was like very
All right.
positive or positive.
Oh,
So
positive,
if you put the
absolutely,
two
yeah.
together, it was the percentage was bigger. Yeah, I think it's good to give that task already in teacher education during the training, where it's kind of they need to do it. Once they are already working and you tell them, would you record yourself? I think if they have this positive experience from the university course, they are more willing to continue it, because as today's topic is career-long learning, so we already invite them to do it at the very first stage, but it's easier to continue with it once you have
Absolutely.
already done it as part of your university studies.
Yeah, and it becomes more of a thing, a habit that becomes part of the way you teach even. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And
I
they
wonder-
get over that first fear that people
yeah.
often have. Yeah.
that we all have about being recorded.
Exactly.
Those are very valid reasons. Indeed.
I
And
would
you
like
both-
to add something here, if I may. I was
Please,
just
Vesna.
reminded when we were talking about the benefit of seeing themselves teaching, which is, we find really fascinating that is not incorporated more, but it's certainly becoming more prevalent, and it is a gift. And this is what I got reminded of a poem by a Scottish poet, Robert Burns, who's once said, "Oh, would some power the gift give us to see ourselves as others see us." And I think that is a power that is actually really useful in any aspect of life, but in teaching, definitely not just for increasing the confidence of the teachers, but to really realize what is effective and what can be worked on. So sorry, I had to add that in because it was just so so inspirational.
Absolutely, I think it's a great line, and I think it's a very good reflection as well. And of course, it has incredible value, and not just as you're saying, not just for teaching, but for everything. And so let's put it as well backwards. So if it's useful for everything, of course, it has to be for teaching, the way that our teachers interact with the classroom and how you direct the courses and so on. So absolutely, and I think that has a lot of value. And I was as well very curious because you both mentioned the aspect of equality in the classroom, and as well, Annie, you've mentioned that your students have found this very useful to work with the special education needs pupils. So can you tell me a bit more, both of you, or one of you if you want, about this? So how can Iris Connect be useful to integrate special education need pupils, and more in general, how can Iris Connect help us bring a bit more equity and perhaps even equality into the classroom?
Well, perhaps Annie can answer the first part of the question about the special educational needs, and I will add on in terms of the more generally supporting equity.
Yes, I can do that. Well, Vesna had a slide about this observant being sitting at the back of a classroom. When it's like this in special education, if you have this extra person in the room, it distracts both the child or the children and also the specialist, especially if they are only learning to become a specialist. So Iris Connect offers opportunity to take this observant out of the room, anywhere else. So that's the great thing about the quality of interaction between the child and the special educator. And what was the second part of the question?
Equity. We're talking about equity.
Yeah. So yeah, we definitely saw great value in that, and the lecturer said it, the mentor said it, and the student said it.
Absolutely, I can imagine.
And also Iris Connect offers this secure platform. So when we need to ask the permissions to do these video recordings, has been surprisingly easy to get those permissions, because we can show that the videos will not be who knows where. There will be in a very safe place, shared with very specific people. But that is very important for the parents as well.
No, absolutely, yeah. I wanted to comment on that as well. So how to answer parents' concern about students being recorded. But Vesna, I would like you also to then direct the question to you. How can IRIS connect supporting equity in the classroom?
It's been very interesting to, like I mentioned before, actually in my presentation, to see that regardless of the infrastructure that exists and the other resources, the system really does lend itself to enabling improvement in teaching and learning in very different environments. And we have been asked this question before, well, doesn't it involve technology that may be expensive, and it is after all a commercial proposition, but we have designed it in a way that really moves away those objections, because we're using existing technology, and we make it available to everyone. So the fact that we have, for example, developed a special camera system for maybe the higher end of recording good quality audio and video and dual view, so that is applicable in certain circumstances. But in everyday life, there is this possibility for very spontaneous recording of practice for strictly professional development purposes, and obviously this is why the security is very important here. And we have worked in countries like South Africa and Thailand and Pakistan, across the globe, to the USA, to Finland and Estonia, etc. And we have found that the technology is becoming more and more accessible, and the fact that we have made the system to be able to be used on any devices, and even in situations when there is no internet connection, because that is one of the characteristics of the app. You can still record it, and it does require internet connection just for that moment of uploading so that it can be reviewed. But from that perspective, when we've worked in for example, in the Johannesburg, in schools where there really aren't many resources, they were still able to get loads of benefit from being able to share resources such as coaching and mentoring, instead of having to travel long distances and stay many nights in different places in order to support the teachers. So from that perspective, there are many examples. Actually, I think we have limited time, but there are many examples where we can enable that sort of equity. And I would like to mention at this point, we do not advocate completely not to have in-person observation. There is time and place for that, and there is value in that. It's just that from our experience and from big body of research, actually, there are a lot of benefits of doing that in addition to more traditional observations.
Absolutely. It's all about balance, isn't it? So you cannot just entirely take technology and substitute it in the same way that we cannot entirely take a teacher and put it outside the classroom. You need to have a bit of both. No, absolutely. And so I think that this is the value, I think, of IRIS Connect, is that we are not innovating for the sake of innovation. We're also trying to make it pedagogically sound. And so I think this is one of the great values of this technology. And I'm very happy as well to hear these concrete examples of how IRIS Connect can support equity. And indeed, I think one of the greatest values is that we no longer need to travel long distances. We no longer need to bring people together. You can do so with one platform, and quite securely so. And so I was wondering, I want to deep a bit deeper into the idea that, when we record classes, we are recording very often minors, as our students tend to be minors. And so how would you address the concerns of parents who may have reticence about their children or the children that they are guarding being recorded? How would you address this?
That's a very, very important question, and it's one that we were aware of right from the start when we designed the platform, and long before the GDPR came into force. The privacy and the security has always been at the heart of what we do, not just obviously from the perspective of the rights and the concerns, rightly so, of the parents and the students, but the teachers themselves. So we've always put the teacher at the heart, and also complete respect for privacy and security. And the reason why we are very confident and is the feedback that we have been getting throughout our working existence so far, is that the fact that the system is designed to really protect, and I think Annie mentioned it earlier, it's a closed platform, highly secure. It's any data that is collected and stored there, including videos and any other text and images, etc., that can be used very effectively in the groups that we provide, is very, very secure. And even this is what I meant when I mentioned earlier some characteristics of the app. What has reassured parents across the world is the fact that the app does not remain on the device. Sorry, the recording doesn't remain on the device. As soon as the recording stops, the video file gets uploaded directly into the secure platform. It gets automatically deleted from the device, and it cannot be accessed by anyone but the person who has the passwords, who has recorded it. And we have dual two-way authentication in certain circumstances. So the fact that the security is of the highest level, and that the purpose of it is always about professional development. And this is why even when the GDPR was introduced, we didn't actually need to make changes at all, because we had always implemented those levels of permissioning for the individual, for the organization, and we were able to just give it the label that is required within the GDPR. So this is where the organization administrators are the data controllers. So the data doesn't go anywhere, it just remains on the platform. And the parents are always reassured that everything that is done is within the highest security, within the regulations. And ultimately, there is a choice to either allow the children to be filmed or not. There is a potential. There are very few cases where that has been an issue. So there is a possibility to position the child discreetly in a place where they cannot be filmed. But in addition to that, we have also developed anonymization feature on the platform. So the recording can be turned into black and white images with outlines only, so that the facial recognition is not possible. And that can be done either at source, or it can be done by the teacher themselves, and the audio is heard as normal. So that is another layer that we have implemented, which has proven to be really, really important in some projects more than others. But we are very confident about that, and we are very grateful that we were able to actually provide not just the teachers with that, but I mentioned earlier, it's been used in the healthcare sector. And during the pandemic in the UK, it was extensively used by doctors, GPs, to conduct online consultations with patients, especially for their education purposes as well. But we were one of the rare systems that had been approved for that. So that was a really good recognition for us.
Thank you, Vesna. I think that's a very reassuring. Answer. I'm also very glad to see that you advanced together with technology, that you implemented new features such as the anonymity feature. So I think that's actually very good to hear. It's quite reassuring. And so thank you for that. Thank you for that very comprehensive answer. And so I'm afraid we're reaching the end of this very interesting webinar. Before I close it, I would like to ask both of you if you would like to make some final remarks, if you would like, there's any other points you would like to make for our audience.
I would just like to thank everybody for their time, and to encourage, if anyone is interested in either the projects that we've been involved with and we are still running. The latest one is the mentoring for school improvement that we're happy to be involved in, or any aspect of what we do, then please don't hesitate to get in touch.
Thank you, Vesna.
Yes, I think we might get a question from comments. Looks to me like this.
So far, I haven't seen any new questions.
Okay, maybe not.
In any case, I would like to invite our audience to fill in the feedback form, where you will also have the option to sign up to receive a follow-up email where we can give you further information about Iris Connect. You can also get the contacts to get in touch with our speakers today as well, so you may ask further questions. So I very much invite you to fill in the form so that you can have the option of hearing more from us. But I would like, before I close the webinar, of course, to warmly thank you, both you, Annie and Vesna, for joining us this afternoon, for telling us more about Iris Connect, telling us more about your experiences at the University of Tartu with the technology. So thanks a lot. It's been truly a pleasure and a delight to hear you both, and it's been very interesting, I hope, as well for our audience. So thanks a lot to both, and thanks a lot to everyone who joined us this afternoon. Please don't forget to fill in the feedback form so that you have a chance to have more information about the topic of today's webinar. Thanks a lot. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.